This is a house of Charles Swing Brown. Join us as we tour this fantastic Second Empire Victorian house.
This is kind of awkward, but that's okay.
It's just how it always is, man. That's how you know we're not paid actors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Let me introduce you guys to Caleb. Caleb has his own YouTube channel, The Second Empire Strikes Back, and it's all about this house and Mr. Brown, which...
We'll bring him in shot later.
yeah, we will. So, all right. So, Caleb, tell me about how you found this house, and because you've been here for what, a year?
A little over a year at this point.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, so tell me how you found the house.
So originally, I was looking in the neighborhood. Actually, I was just looking at Realtor, trying to find kind of the next place I'd want to mess with, because I had a place previous to this that I worked on for 3 years and refinanced to actually get this place at all. But essentially, there's a huge building on the corner on my block. It's called the Sheehan Mansion, and it's actually the family who started kind of the whole area. They actually sold my guy the land that he built this house on. And I was really looking at that one, but it's so much bigger and there's so much work to be done that it was out of my league. There was no way I could possibly make a dent to the amount of work that it needed, especially monetarily. I just couldn't afford it. But I love this area. I love the north side of my city, and it doesn't get a lot of love. And I love this little block, and it felt like a good community. So I wanted to try to stay up here. So we went down Google Maps on a computer and just wrote down addresses of houses that I thought were interesting that might be worth my time. So this one came up. We looked up a bunch of the other addresses. This one happened to have been for sale about 3 years ago and didn't sell. So I contacted that realtor, and luckily the guy was willing to sell for the same price as well. So we got it for $65,000.
Oh, awesome.
And basically, as soon as me and my girlfriend came in through the front door and saw the shutters and the features here, I knew I had to have the house. These two rooms here are probably the reason I mostly bought the place, because they're so well preserved. All the woodwork's in basically mint condition, other than a little bit of dirt that's stuck to the shellac. The woodwork's basically perfect. That including the pocket doors, which are, they don't roll the nicest or sound the nicest, but they do work, and that's a big plus in a little house like this. One of my favorite features of the house for sure are these shutters, because not only are they just kind of cool to have shutters in a house, but they fold up into wood paneling. So and I've never seen shutters that do that. So for me, that's just, I don't know, an incredible little feature. And the fact that somebody had put new windows in and didn't destroy them is somehow miraculous to me. Been collecting a lot of furniture, so that's what all this stuff is. This actually was the only original light fixture in the house. Because of the area it's in, was able to have both electric and gas when it was built in 1890, which is an extremely rare thing. And I think it's only because this area that I'm in was called Millionaire's Row. This is a smaller house for Millionaire's Row. Some of them were really big, but that means there was a local power station nearby because the main city one didn't get built until 1901. So we didn't have a power station until then, but they had a little local one, and it allowed the guys to put chandeliers like this in because they had the city coal gas and they had electricity. And to see it in one chandelier is quite a rare thing. If you have a house further out from the city, this wouldn't be possible. So it's a rather interesting feature, and it's really cool to have at least one original chandelier here. So cool. I just got to shine it back up. So getting there. So pocket doors. I do not believe that the floors in the first parlor, the formal parlor here, are original, but these ones here for sure are. The reason I say those aren't is because they're not top nailed. This floor is top nailed, and it has this beautiful inlay. The best in the house for sure. And then in this room, somebody has messed with the plaster on the ceiling as well. The medallion here is original, and the plaster crown molding is original as well. But you can see there's a weird gap where it stops around the fireplace. So something had to happen here at some point for that to go away. And they just kind of smoothed down the edges and tried to make it blend, but it doesn't work perfectly. And this is a mantle we actually found in Tennessee. Both the parlors were missing their mantles and their tile that went to those as well. Luckily, though, we did get back some of the original tile for the mantle in the formal parlor, which is still miraculous to have any piece of the house come back to you after somebody's stolen it. So, got really lucky there. And then everything around here is just things we've collected. Most of the items up here are actually things that were pulled out of the yard. So these were all metal detected and found in the yard. So as you guys see in a second, there is a was a vet clinic in the basement. The second owner was a veterinarian. And these are vaccine tags, dog tags from 1929 and 1928. So the years he practiced here. So these were really cool. We found 6 of them in the yard, and these are 2 of them. We also have a 1889 Mexican peso, which is kind of cool because it's the year the house was built. So I don't know if that was thrown in the ground for any reason, but really cool item to find. So, and then we did have a lock as well. That was we know was a souvenir sold in the St. Louis World's Fair. So again, a cool little thing to find. So that's pretty much it for the front 2 parlors. They're definitely the nicest 2 rooms in the house, but they're not the only nice rooms in the house, let's say. Back out this way, we get back to the entryway and the oak staircase. So this is all quarter sawn oak. Both of the parlors, all the woodwork in them is cherry. So on one side of the pocket doors that open to the hallway, they're oak, and the other side they're cherry, so they're split and they're veneered on each side. So this would be the hallway. This is the second stairwell here. This would be the servants' or maid's stair. Originally this here was the butler's pantry. The doorway was actually there. You can kind of see the split, and that middle beam didn't exist. I just took the frame out of that, and I'm starting to plaster up everything here. But this was the butler's pantry, and this part of it didn't exist. But I think it's interesting they had the art glass windows in here to let light through to the stairwell and into the butler's pantry itself. So we'll skip over the kitchen and head right to the dining room first. This is another one of the more grand rooms. All the woodwork in here is all painted, so we're slowly getting that all off. So this here is the dining room. I really love the plastering here because this medallion is unique to the house. And I love that it has like grapes and like maple leaves and like pineapples on the edges. So, you know, it's the dining room, so you put food all over it. So I thought that was pretty cool. We have a built-in china cabinet here, which actually has an old push-button switch in it that still works. I've since disconnected the power to that section because we've replaced the power in here. But it did work right up until that point, and I hope to just reattach it and not change anything about it. This is definitely the best remaining mantle in the house. Because not only is it stone and obviously beautifully carved, but there's a lot of really intricate details that are nearly impossible to capture on camera. I've tried a few times, but there's a lot of carving and stuff, and I think they probably would have put ink or something in it because that's a lot of work to not really see it, and it's darker here and lighter here for some reason, but it's the same amount of relief, so I'm not quite sure why that is. I'll have to consult at some point. But it'll either have to be probably like a black ink or a gilt, so like a gold pattern put in there. One or the other. I'll probably end up doing something like that at some point. And I love that the tile is still here as well, which I can't say about many of the other fireplaces. So, or one other. There's one upstairs that is too. Then we have this swinging door. These plates we found, they're in Arabic, or a really stylized, hard to read version of Arabic, but supposedly they're very close to saying hello and goodbye on both sides. So I think that's really interesting. And this door swings, so if you're the maid or the cook or the nanny or whatever making a meal, it's easy to come in both ways. And this would lead directly into the kitchen. Now the kitchen was maybe the most muddled room in the house. So we basically ripped it all out even before I started the channel. It was like 60s, 70s. There was like an island here and some cabinetry here, but it was all a mess and particle board and crap that had rotted, and so it was just time to get it all out. But when we ripped everything back, we did find the original look of the kitchen because this is where the sink would have been. And there's the bead board and then the top cap and everything. And they somewhat tried to mimic that. They used the old top cap and the beadboard, but that they used this stuff here, which is just old flooring. It doesn't have the bead or anything, and it didn't quite look. So they tried a little bit to make it look old, but it wasn't quite right. But essentially, we're going to turn this back into an 1890s kitchen with 1920s appliances. Because the 20s stuff is, you know, modern enough to use. I don't want to, you know, cool with blocks of ice, and I don't want to cook with wood or coal. So, you know, gas stove, actual refrigeration, and everything else will be old school.
Okay, so tell me who built the house and the story behind the individual, because that seems like it's just as big of part of the story as the house itself.
Well, probably the bigger part of the story, right? The house only exists because of the story. So the guy who built it was a guy named Charles S. Brown. He was a woodworking machinist. So while he dabbled in woodwork and did hands-on woodworking, he was the guy who built the tools, who built the woodwork. So he was a pretty good machinist, and he was a pattern maker for a company called H.B. Smith, and he's from New Jersey. So him and another guy named Gorham Hall got together, and Gorham Hall was a foreman for H.B. Smith. And he basically took his best pattern maker, stole him from H.B. Smith, and they both moved here to St. Louis and started Hall and Brown Woodworking Machinery Company. The business operated, I think, from 1880 all the way to 1960 something. So it's a pretty big list. A lot of machines, very heavy, big industrial machines. Still a lot of them around there, around here. But Mr. Brown himself, you know, he he fell in love with his organist at in New Jersey, and he actually went back at some point and swooned her,
yeah,
you know, brought her back here. But he felt guilty about stealing their organist from the church, so he actually bought an organ for the church. And supposedly the church and the organ are still there. But since she was a big organist, we actually have a pump organ here in the house instead of a piano. Thinking about all the different little facts, I know too many now. They were a big part of the World's Fair, the Machinery Pavilion. They had a big booth there. They had a big influence on a lot of things. Like, they were a fairly big company.
Yeah.
And Gorham and Mr. Brown were like really close together. Like they shared a lot of things. When Gorham Hall died because he was older, Mr. Brown adopted his daughter. When Mr. Brown and his wife were in Europe for vacation and their son stayed here, their son contracted typhoid, and it was the Halls that looked after him. You know, we have a pocket, or we know of a pocket watch that the History Museum has here locally in St. Louis, that has a pocket watch that was given to Mr. Brown from Mr. Hall during Christmas of 1884, with a photo of his wife on the clock face, you know. So we know that the families were very, very close, and it's kind of cool to kind of track down their history. And we found lots of little silly anecdotes, like while Mr. Brown was trying to win his wife over, he went on a date with her, but then got distracted by a field of watermelons. Why that was written down, why I know that information, I don't know. I think the organ story is kind of funny, the fact that he went and got the organist and then he did this, and so all my YouTube subscribers now started calling Mr. Brown Mr. Steal Your Organist Brown, which I think is pretty great.
Right there.
Exactly. Like, I do believe most of the second floor up here was all carpeted, at least from this line here, because this is all what's called pitch pine, or it's fir. Either way, it's cheaper, soft wood. It's all hard of pine, so it's still a nice, hard, soft wood, but this wouldn't have been classy enough for them to have. So they would have probably had carpet or something else like that down. Even though people don't think carpet really existed in that time frame, it did. The Campbell house is proof of that. This is one of the original wallpapers we found in the house. And it would have been, because I found it all the way down there as well. So the whole stairwell, I believe, would have been covered in this. At least to here-ish. For us, we might do a Lincrusta or an Eclipta, you know, a heavy embossed paper for the bottom half. Because I want to open this up to people, once you have this much money, like, is how much it will cost to recreate that and then cover all the walls in here is a fortune. If I have to do it that way, then, you know, having a half panel down of like Lincrusta might ease the blow if somebody nicks it or hits it or cuts it or something. A little easier to repair than that. So, kind of weighing my options there. This is the original panel box. So, you know, your old electrical This actually predates fuse boxes, or fuses at all. So what would happen is when things got hot, it would burn your wire, and that would break the circuit. But somebody has jumped it somewhat recently with fairly modern wire, and that's why it's all burnt, because it's way too high of a gauge to burn through. So luckily nothing burnt down when they were trying to use this. But the whole thing's on slate, so slate doesn't burn. Luckily enough for the house, because that would be a really, really big fire hazard. So this here is the main master bedroom. I believe this probably would have been Sarah's bedroom, his wife. I say that because the tile work here has like flowers and feels a bit more feminine to me than the other room. It's a bit bigger and women had more things to put on. So as far as wardrobe is concerned, this would probably make more sense for her. And the other bedroom has a smoking balcony. So, I can kind of defer. Most of the time back then, people slept separately. So that's kind of my thoughts on it and how I thought it all worked. Every room up here does have a transom window. They all still work, although I am missing a few that have the right hardware. But they all kind of glide quite nicely. That one on the track yet. They all still work. They all do their job. And if you open a window up here and open a window in the back, the wind that comes through here is ridiculous. It really is like air conditioning. It's pretty cool. So yeah, again, the mantle here heavily carved. I don't know if they would have put gilt or something in it or ink, but it's hard to see when you're far away. So I imagine they wanted to show off the time and money that somebody put into that. So I imagine they would have put something in there, ink or gilt. So, and that's probably something I'll have to look into somewhat soon. So this next room, I believe, was Mr. Brown, so the head of the household. Again, the reason I say that is because if you look at this window, it actually drops all the way to the floor, and it's what's called a Jefferson window, and so you can open it up and it actually slides inside the wall. So there would have been a balcony out there. We've since taken the balcony off because it was pretty rotten, pretty beat up, and there's a part above the wall here on the next floor up that was starting to collapse down that way. So it was rip it apart or let the building collapse. So that had to go. It'll be replaced at some point. We'll put a new one back up and recreate the Victorian pieces of it. Although the Victorian stuff was all gone off that balcony. That was all way gone. And then he had a more, in my opinion, masculine fireplace. And I thought the tiles were missing here, but no, it's just a piece of stone. It's the same stone as the mantle itself. So, and it's only got one crack down the middle, so I think that's pretty much a win, especially for as old as it is. All of the doors in the house, except for these rooms and the pocket doors downstairs, are what's called curly pine. It's actually a pretty remarkable lumber because it's pretty holographic, like any burled wood, I suppose. The stuff's fairly rare to get. The only place I know how to get it right now is people who go and pick up logs from the bottom of rivers from old logging operations. And one in about every 400 log trees they pull, or pine trees they pull up, has that pattern in it. I've heard from a few people that they think it's extinct. I don't know about it. It's just a mutation of the pine that makes the outer skin look bumpy, and then it has all this crazy curl in it. But they're really beautiful, and I'm really stoked to have those. It also makes it really hard if I have to replace a door to find another one. So this is the maids area, except for that room there, which I believe is the nursery. But the woodwork changes quite tremendously here. You don't have the middle block any longer, and on top you just have little simple rosettes, as opposed to the more ornate top blocks that we have on the rest of the house. I believe this would have been the only original bathroom in the house. Again, 1890, pretty amazing to have a bathroom at all. But even with the curly pine, this little tiny closet door here for the bathroom is still curly, so like that's kind of incredible too. This kind of starts too where I've started putting the new windows in, so these are brand new windows, and all the back half of the house on the second floor has them. They're made out of mahogany, so they're not the original windows, but our original windows were really messed up. Luckily enough though, these were built on antique equipment, and because my guy manufactured antique machinery, some of that equipment actually happened to be Holland Brown stuff. So a lot of things we're doing with the house are actually get put back with the owner's tools. This is what I believe to be the nursery. When the Browns moved in, they had 3 pretty young children, and they had an infant as well. The infant died about 7 or 8 days after they moved in. His name was Warren, so this is probably the room he passed away in, because the room next door is the Maids Room. So since it's the Maids Room, I imagine this, or maybe the nanny, but I only have a maid in the census. There's no nanny on record. So that's probably her room, and she probably would have watched after Warren in his last days here. And then I think it might have been turned into a study or something at some point as the kids got older. But the woodwork goes back to being the nicer trim. And even the door is split in half, where it's nice on one side and lesser on the other. And so you'll see that split all over the place. And this fireplace, being definitely the lesser of all of them in the house, is a very aesthetic movement. This was all painted white and then painted brown. So I started stripping with chemical stripper on it, and that's why I got all the way down to the slate here. But this is really what's underneath it. But I have enough of this pattern to recreate the pieces that are missing. Luckily, the background I come from is an artist, so that shouldn't be too hard. Although I've never done faux marbling, so we'll figure out how fun that is. And like the woodwork out there, all this woodwork is painted as well. So this is the shellac and wax treatment on that window as well. Definitely don't let steam get to it though, because it doesn't do nice things to your shellac.
Is metal, right? On the outside of the mansard, or is it slate?
It's slate.
It's slate.
Yeah, slate and wood.
It almost looks like it has a metallic, almost like a zinc or something like that.
Because they painted it red.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, it's actually supposed to be, so in the original photo there's these little triangles at the top and bottom are like diamond shapes.
Yep.
And they're like sawtooths on the top and the bottom. And they're in green slate. And then the rest of the roof is in like a blue.
Okay.
Or like a gray slate that you would normally see, like a
Very
darker
cool.
blue or gray slate.
And then probably like a Virginia slate or something. I
Yeah,
know that there's very specific
areas where the colors come from. In fact, here's some of the slate here. So you can see that's the actual color of it. Maybe more in the shade would make more sense. But they painted it red, which again does no favors for the stone itself. You can see some of the red paint there. Some of it comes off.
Like, what is Second Empire, and how does that tie in?
It's, what is it, like the second empire of, like, Napoleon or whatever. So it's like Napoleon's grandson, I think.
Okay.
Napoleon III, I believe.
Yeah.
It's his time in France, and it's some second empire of, it's like the second coming of, like, Napoleon's regime, whatever they called that exactly. So it's that second empire.
Interesting.
And so it's basically the style that Paris is in right now. So all the big mansard roofs and all that stuff.
Yep.
I think even like the Palace of Versailles has a mansard. So it's really more for the mansard. And the mansard itself was actually devised as a tax write-off, because you wouldn't get taxed for your roof. You would get taxed for how many floors you had. So this didn't actually count as a floor. This would be a two-story building with a mansard.
What?
And at least, I don't know if that applies so much to the U.S. side of things, but it definitely applies to the French side of things. So that's kind of, it was like a tax workaround, the mansard roof. But architecturally,
crazy.
it's very pretty. But yes, the mansard roof is what makes it a second empire. The stone front, I know it exists in other places, but it's very common here in St. Louis. And then the outside, there's also Eastlake details, or aesthetic movement details, and there's also Queen Anne details. Like above the windows in the back, there's these sunbursts that are very Queen Anne in style. So they kind of, just like all Victorians, they took styles and they grabbed what they liked and they left what they didn't. And you get a kind of a mishmash. I mean, like Second Empire, one of the big things is having rounded windows. There's not a single rounded window in this house. It's actually more Italianate in that respect. So it's kind of a mix of a few different things. But I would say the main two are definitely Second Empire and Italianate.
Yeah.
With other flourishes.
I think you're probably one of the few individuals that I've met that like welcomes people to come and say, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is the property. Come, like, check it out.
There have been people that have been scared outside once or twice. They're like, oh, I didn't want to bother you. I just want to take a photo. I'm like, come on in, you know, like.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're able to do that. And
but those people make it able for me to do this at all.
yeah,
You know, YouTube has been paying the bills, and it is making this possible. So, how can I not? You know, that and, I mean, it is my art, right? Like, this is taking place of my art. So, what good is a painting if it's never seen?
yeah,
And I think that's the same thing with this. Like, and I think it instills pride in people from St. Louis, and I want more civic pride in my city. So whatever I can do to increase that, I think is a good thing.
yeah,
You know, people overlook this city, and I just want to show people it's actually a pretty rad place.
yeah,
If you just take the time to look a little bit deeper than a few of the crumbling buildings. There's some wonderful neighborhoods here, some beautiful architecture, some really nice people, some amazing food, you know. So the more I can promote that and push that, and, you know, if I give up a little bit of privacy, whatever, like it's the price to pay, and I think it's well worth it. Plus, I don't think about this place as my house, really, anyway. It's everybody's house.
yeah,
I'm only going to live here for so long. The house is going to outlive me.
yeah, yeah. That's true. So do you feel like the preservation side and the like pride in community go hand in hand? Because I feel the same way in Marshalltown. Like I
think
I
so.
want people. It kind of has a bad rap too, you
Yeah.
know, the town, and I want people to know like about the amazing culture and the amazing food and like the amazing experiences
Right,
and
right.
the history of the place, and so it's kind of interesting that we have that in parallel with wanting to preserve the architecture of the area.
Well, I mean, I think it's as you start looking into something and realize how much time and energy somebody in the past put there for you, for this city to grow, to you know, I mean, because these people spent, you know, fortunes in their lives here to build this city up, to make something for themselves. I mean, Mike Brown moved across the country because he thought St. Louis was a great spot to start. How can you not feel pride after that? Like, people did before us, you know, and I don't know why we've lost so much of that. But yeah, I think it has to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know, like you start with the house, but then you love your neighborhood, and then you love the people in your neighborhood, and then it goes to the city. And I think it's more than that even for me now, but.
I want to give a huge shout out to Caleb for opening his home for us to tour, and let me know what you guys think of this video. It's a little bit different than what we usually do. I'll go ahead and link to Caleb's information up here in the video. Go ahead and give it a click if you want to follow along with future projects regarding this house.